Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a story from our source material that is just, well, it's absolutely wild. Imagine a guy who literally froze water to save a desert. A man who's totally celebrated for his genius, his ecological innovations, and his downright dedication to education. Now, imagine that exact same guy years later putting his actual life on the line and starving himself for what he believes in. I mean, how does a renowned innovator transform into this fierce protester? Let's unpack this.
Okay, this is where the story hits a total boiling point. We're looking at day 20 of a grueling hunger strike. A man is surrounded by police, forcibly detained, and covered under a white sheet. It's chaotic, it's visceral, and it just instantly demands your attention. You know, the sheer contrast between this peaceful, fasting man and the overwhelming physical detention is pretty startling to see.
And really, that brings us to the massive, central question we've got to ask today. How on earth did a national hero end up here? How does this celebrated builder, a guy who literally constructed lifelines for his community, suddenly become viewed by the system as a threat that needs to be silenced under a sheet? To wrap our heads around this clash, we really need to understand the man behind the protest first.
Section 1. The Builder of Futures. More than a movie.
Now, if you've seen the huge blockbuster film 3 Idiots, you definitely know the character Sonam Wangchuk, right? The quirky, brilliant genius who completely defied traditional education. Well, our source material highlights that Sonam Wangchuk is the actual, real-life inspiration for that famous character. But as fun as pop culture is, the reality of what this man actually achieved is way more impressive than any movie plot. He wasn't a politician, and he definitely wasn't just a movie trope. At his core, he was a teacher.
I mean, up in the barren, high-altitude deserts of Ladakh, where getting water was basically a myth, Wangchuk engineered these massive artificial glaciers called ice stupas. He practically taught the mountains how to cry, giving local farmers crucial water during the dry months. And he didn't stop there. He also built the Sikmal campus, which are these entirely solar-heated alternative schools built specifically for students that the traditional system had totally failed. He was a real-life engineer solving real human problems.
So the contrast is pretty stark, right? On one hand, we have the fictional movie character meant to entertain us, and on the other, the real-life engineer, an actual builder of minds. Where there was no water, he built stupas. Where there was educational despair, he built schools. He literally built hope where there wasn't any. And this is the baseline of who Sonam Wangchuk is. He's a builder. Which kind of makes the next part of our source material super jarring.
Section 2. The catalyst for protest. A system fractured.
So what changed? The source material points to two specific fractures in the system that push this builder to his absolute limit. First up, an educational crisis. Wangchuk, being a lifelong educator, saw the fallout of the NEET exam paper leaks firsthand. For him, this wasn't just some passing headline, it was a deep betrayal where students' entire futures were just being compromised and sold out. Second, regional rights. He felt this profound betrayal over his homeland of Ladakh. The sources note that Ladakh was promised very specific regional and environmental protections under the 6th Schedule of the Constitution, a promise that, according to the protesters, was met with total silence. These unresolved issues, this combo of compromised education and ignored regional demands, became the absolute breaking point.
Section 3. Anatomy of a Fast, the Physical Toll.
Our sources actually map out this incredibly grueling timeline at Jantarmantar. It all kicks off on March 1st. Day 1, the fast begins. By day 10, the physical weakening is really starting to show. Fast forward to day 15, and medical checks are showing his blood pressure is steadily falling. And then we hit day 20. But instead of, a debate or a dialogue opening up, the response was police detention. It escalated from a peaceful, deeply personal sacrifice straight to a forced removal.
9 kilograms. Just let that sink in for a second. That is the amount of body weight he lost over those 20 days. It's a really stark, visceral piece of data. It kind of forces us to recognize the very real physical sacrifice happening right behind the news headlines. This isn't just a political statement on a piece of paper. It's a man literally fading away for his cause.
But even in detention, his resolve was just rock solid. He released a statement saying, "I am not on hunger strike by choice. I am forced to do it, but I will not back down. Not for education, not for Ladakh, not for our children's future." I mean, that right there is the voice of unwavering commitment. It lays out exactly why he's putting his body on the line. But, as you might guess, a protest of this magnitude rarely stays isolated to just one person. This individual sacrifice ended up igniting a much larger fire.
Section 4. March to Parliament. July 20.
And that brings us to the Parliament building.
the ultimate target of the Chalo Sansad movement, which translates to "let's go to parliament." The detention of this one man sparked a massive collective response. Citizens, students, supporters, they're all preparing to take their demands directly to the streets. The sentiment captured in the source text is super powerful here. When the parliament sleeps, the streets must speak. So it's not just about one man under a sheet anymore. It's about a wider public demanding to be heard.
So, the crucial takeaway we really arrive at from the source material is this profound narrative shift. He froze water to save a desert, and now he risks his life to save a democracy. The ecological innovator has been completely forced by circumstance into the role of a democratic protester. It is a massive evolution of a public figure, but it's driven entirely by his core values of education and environmental preservation. Which ultimately leaves us with a pretty heavy question to chew on. What really is the role of dissent in a modern democracy? And will you stand up? When a celebrated builder feels that starving himself is literally the only way to be heard, what does that say about the systems we rely on? It's a provocative thought, for sure, and one that challenges all of us to consider where we stand when the big questions of our time are being asked. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.